Welcome back to Legends Live, presented by the National Basketball Retired Players Association, the official home of NBA and WNBA legends. And today is a very exciting episode. We have one of the biggest legends to grace the WNBA court. Air Swoopes is here today. Miss Sheryl Swoopes is in the house with her fellow WNBA champion from the Houston Comets, Yolanda Moore. They're going to have a great conversation. Sheryl, we all know she was the first lady signed into the WNBA. She won 4 WNBA championships, I think like 6-time WNBA All-Star, 3-time WNBA MVP. Pretty sure she has 3 Olympic gold medals for Team USA. We all know those awesome kicks, the air swoops, but enough, she can fill you in on a little bit more of her backstory. But here today to join us on Legends Live, the wonderful Yolanda Moore and the legendary Sheryl Swoopes. Hello, ladies.
Hey.
What's up? Hey.
Hey, Sheryl.
What's up, yo? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
You know, I can't complain. That's all I'll say. I'm good. I'm still alive and kicking, and so I'm good. You look beautiful.
Well, thank you, honey. Thank you. I couldn't have said that about an hour ago, but you know.
You're welcome. You do.
Listen, okay, so I'm excited to talk to you because I mean, the world knows who you are. You are like the most recognizable, just most accomplished female women's basketball player ever. And I am so honored and excited to be able to have this conversation with you. And so I won't labor, like I won't go into all of your accolades. I mean, that would be the show. Like we could spend that much time just talking about all the amazing things you've done. But I really want to give the audience just kind of like an inside look into you. A lot of times we hear other people's stories and we don't really get to hear them from you. So I'm excited to kind of hear, your journey about how you started, and the things that you're doing now. So I'll ask you, when did you fall in love with basketball?
You know, it's so crazy that you and I are sitting here having this conversation because, I mean, we were teammates. Yes. But it's amazing to see just how people grow and as a person and how things change, but to be able to stay in contact and connect with your former teammates is something that I always say I'm so grateful and thankful that basketball gave me that opportunity. So I'm excited to be doing this with you too.
Good. Thank you.
I started playing ball when I was 7 years old. And the crazy thing is I think I knew at a very young age that basketball was, like I would say, basketball was going to change my life.
Wow.
I loved it so much. I was so passionate about it. I was so competitive, even at such a young age. There was something about being able to hold on to that orange ball and be in control of me. Right. I can remember and I didn't even have to have a goal with a net or a goal at all. Didn't have to be in the gym. I would just go outside. As long as I had a basketball in my hands, I felt like everything was going to be okay.
That's cool. So who introduced the game to you?
I would say my 2 older brothers. My oldest brother, James, he grew up, he played in college. But I just, I would watch them outside playing. And I would say to my mom that was something I wanted to do. And even then, she would say, oh, no. Sports and basketball are for boys.
Oh, wow.
So she wanted me to stay inside and play with my dolls and my dishes and, and be a girly girl. And I was such the tomboy growing up. That's not what I wanted to do. And I remember when I finally convinced her that it was okay for me to be a girl and play sports. I tried out for, back then, it wasn't so much AAU in West Texas where I grew up, it was Little Dribblers. And I tried out for the team, made the team, but I told the coach and his wife, I said, you guys are going to have to come to my house and convince my mom to let me play. Now, she let me try out, and I think she let me try out because I don't even think my mom thought at the time that I was going to make the team.
Oh,
So
really?
they came over, sat down, had a conversation, talked to her, and man, that was like one of the longest conversations ever. She made them promise that they were going to watch after me and take care of me. And as they say, the rest is history.
You know what? I never would have thought that because, having played with you, I know how much your mom was like your biggest fan. And
Mm-hmm.
I never would have thought that she was against you playing ball because she was so like wherever you were, she was there. Like she was legit your biggest fan. So that is so interesting.
It's crazy, right? When you think about it,
Yeah.
because I do agree with you. My mom, once I decided this is what I'm doing, she was there every step of the way. I mean, driving from Brownfield, Texas to Atlanta, a 19-hour drive to watch us play in the Final Four. It was like, and even the Olympics. But I think in the beginning, it was more of I don't know, because I don't think my mom ever saw girls play. It was always
Right.
boys. So I think even in her mind, sports, it was something that was supposed to be for boys and not girls. But thank God, I was able to convert her, and then she pushed me and became my biggest fan.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. So you started with little dribblers, and obviously you stuck with it. And so you go to high school, and then you have to make a decision about college. Now, you
Hmm.
won a high school? Did you win a high school state championship?
I did.
Yes, I
We
thought
won
that. Like,
in 1980, 1989.
yeah. So you win your high school state championship, and now you're being recruited. You ended up at Texas Tech, but that wasn't your first choice, right?
No, that wasn't my. People, I think in life, right? People always say if I could go back and change something, I would. And
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I'm probably just the opposite because I feel like everything that we've done, every path we've crossed was a part of our journey, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, I learned something along the way. Even if it was the wrong way, I learned something.
Right.
So for me, growing up in West Texas, back then, the University of Texas, UT, was the Yukon of today. Or,
Right.
I'll say the South Carolinas of today. Don
Right.
Stay. Like,
Okay.
um,
Okay.
but so if you were good and you wanted to win championships, and if Jody Conrad was recruiting you, it was a no-brainer. You didn't look at any other school, you didn't think about any other school, you didn't even take visits to any other school. You went to play for the Lady Longhorns. So the first letter I got from them, and I had over, I don't know, 50 something letters. It was amazing for me to see all these people recognizing my talents. But even then, I kind of pushed all those to the side, and I kept waiting for that one from the
From
Lady
Texas.
Longhorns. And when I got that letter, I screamed, I cried, I showed it to my mom, and I said, "This is it. This is where I'm going." Before I took a visit, before I met anybody, it was a done deal. And my
Right.
mom, though, she did say to me, she said, "Hold on a minute. What do you know about this school? What do you know about the coaches? What do you know about the city?" Like all of these questions, I was like, "Nothing. I know it's Jody Conrad and the University
Right.
of Texas. That's where I'm going."
That's where I'm going because that's what you do. That's what you're supposed to do, right?
That's what you're supposed to do. Yeah.
So in thinking about, hearing you say that, I went because that's what was expected of me. And you think that you look at even now, kids going through that process, a lot of times we see the transfer portal and all that kind of stuff. They make
Hmm.
decisions based on what they believe is expected of them, not necessarily what's best for me. So you get to Texas, and what was that experience like that made you kind of take a step back and say, okay, maybe I need to rethink this?
Well, I was there for 6 days. And some people say 6 days isn't long enough to know if that's the right place for you or not. But for me, I knew,
When
right?
you
Like
know, you
I
know.
knew. And it had nothing to do with Austin, the school, my teammates, the coaches. It had everything to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, I do think that's a big thing that kids do today, whether that's men or women,
Mm-hmm.
more so on the women's side. You choose a school for the name of the school. right? And say, well, if UConn's recruiting me, that's where I'm going,
Right.
without doing any homework, research. Why is this the right fit for you? Well, I didn't do any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I come from a town of about 10,000 people, and I'm such a mama's girl. But when I got there, I was lonely. Even though my teammates were there, I was lonely. Like I just wasn't happy.
Mm-hmm.
It in my gut, it just did not feel like the right place to be. And I called my mom every day, bawling, crying, and it took a lot of me convincing her that I
Wow.
made a mistake. Because
Mm-hmm.
my mom was always the type of woman that said, when you make a commitment to something, you stick to it.
You stick to it.
But I cried and cried and cried and cried and said, I miss you. I know this is not going to work. And she finally said, baby, come on home.
Right.
That was all I needed to hear.
Right. And so you leave Texas and you end up going to a JUCO,
Mm-hmm.
and you tear it up. Like y'all won a national championship there at the JUCO. So then what was and so you reopened your recruitment process, right?
Yeah.
So was Texas Tech always on the radar, or did they have to come in and kind of convince you to come to their school?
No, even out of high school, Texas Tech recruited me, and they were always on the radar. But I think in their minds, again, they felt like once I had gotten the letter from Texas that they were kind of out of it, right? But
Right.
every school thought that. I mean, because really that was the truth. But for me, and I tell this to people all the time, junior colleges are good.
Yes.
For me, I would not change that journey at all. There was so much I learned about myself. I learned about basketball. I learned about what it meant to be a student athlete by going to a junior college and the responsibilities of being a student athlete. So when I left Texas, I knew I wanted to go to junior college because I didn't want to sit out a year. I was like
Mm-hmm.
ready to play. And South Plains Junior College, they recruited me for a little bit out of high school, but I think Coach Harden was like, we're never going to get her.
Right.
But when I made the decision, I had a plan now, right? When I made the decision to leave Texas, I knew what my plan or my journey would be. What I didn't know was if those opportunities were still there.
Right.
So I get home for the weekend. I call the coach at South Plains, have a conversation, tell him, I'm not going back to Texas, would love to come there. He didn't believe me. He thought me and one of my high school teammates who was going to school there, he thought we were playing a joke on it. So he said to me, he said, Sheryl, if you're serious, show up here Monday morning at 8 o'clock. And I said, okay. Now here's the problem. We didn't have a car. Like my mom didn't have a car. So I said, okay, I'll be there, not knowing how I was gonna get there. But one thing I can say about my mother, and she's always been that type of woman. Like the old saying, where
There's
there's
a
a
way.
will, there's a way.
Absolutely.
She was going to find a way. I got off the phone, told my mom, she made some calls. Next morning, car was there. We go to South Plains. I signed, done deal. 2 years of South Plains. And then I knew immediately when I left there that I was going to Texas Tech because I wanted to stay closer to home.
Oh wow. Oh wow. That's interesting. It's interesting you say that you had a plan. Like you knew you were gonna go, like you knew the steps even, back then. So that's
I didn't have a plan coming out of high school. You know what I
right.
mean?
Right.
It was, well, it's Texas, so I'm going to Texas. But after I left Texas, and a lot of that had to do with my mom saying, okay, well, what is your plan?
Mm.
And I knew then that it was important for me to have a plan. Now, one thing I will say is South Plains was one thing, but going to Texas Tech afterwards, I had to work on my game, right?
Mm.
Like I had to prove to Texas Tech that this is why you guys should still want me, right? This is
Mm.
why you should still recruit me and give me a scholarship. And so I did. That was my plan when I left Texas.
So always that. I'm so glad you said that because of who you are and who you've been to basketball. To hear you say that I knew I still had to prove myself.
Mm-hmm.
When you have kids today who feel like, well, I was this in high school, so what, I went to JUCO or whatever, you should still want me. Like, I shouldn't have to prove myself.
Yeah.
But hearing it come from, an icon like that just gives even more insight into the mind of a champion. Like, you
Hmm.
never felt like, you never got complacent. You never felt like,
No,
I'm good, y'all should
no.
want me, right? You
Like it
always
just,
felt like,
I never allowed myself to think that way. And it's
mm-hmm,
funny we're having this conversation because people are like, what? I DVR'd The Last Dance, right? Because I
mm-hmm,
didn't want to watch commercials or anything. So I just watched it this past weekend and I'm sitting there listening to Michael talk and there's so much stuff he's saying. And I was like, yep,
right.
right. And because playing with the comments, right? Like our mentality and our mindset was just totally different. I
Completely
don't
different.
care who you were, and especially if you were a rookie, coming in thinking you're going to come in late and, just kind of go through the motions. No, champions have a completely different mindset. And we're
Right,
always working on getting better and thinking about how can I improve myself so that I'm making the team better.
right.
And that was my mentality, even going back to college. I always felt like I have to prove something. There's somebody somewhere working a little bit harder than me that wanted a little bit more than me. And that's what kept me motivated. It was never about going into a season saying, no, I'm gonna be MVP this year. I'm gonna be defense player of the year. Those things never happened. What happened was me going into a season saying, this is what I got to do to get better so that I'm going to make my team better. Because I'm a firm believer that if your team is good and your team wins, all the individual accolades that you deserve will come.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. So freshman year, Sheryl Swoopes at Texas Tech. What was that experience like? Did you feel like once you got there, you had this mentality, I got to prove myself? Was it a big learning curve for you, like adjusting?
Well, no, remember, I'm a junior now because I played
Well,
two
yeah, you're a
years
junior,
at
right?
junior college. But even being a junior, now it's a completely different level, right? I'm at a
Mm-hmm.
BCS school now. And as women, and I hate to say this, we're so petty. Like women, we can be so petty about
Right.
a lot of things. So even then, like I did some pretty good things at junior college, but I think there were still people, players, teammates when I transferred to Texas Tech that didn't quite believe the hype per se, right?
Right.
Like, okay, I hear all this stuff, but is she really that? Is she all that? And they were a good team before I came. So now I'm coming in and my mentality is, oh no, I'm coming for your spot.
Right.
Like
Because that's what
I
you
know
do.
you're, huh?
That's what you do when you're a competitor. You come in there to play.
Yeah.
Right.
Like you're my teammate, but you're also my enemy because you got what I want. So so I'm coming to get it. Like I gotta get that. So I didn't go into my junior year at Texas Tech saying, well, they wanted me as a freshman, but I chose not to come. I went in saying, all right, it's a completely different ball game now. I gotta earn the upperclassmen, all them. I gotta earn their respect. I also
Mm-hmm.
gotta earn my coach's respect. So it was always for me. It was about working. It was about putting the time in, putting the work in, and eventually my teammates were going to give me that respect because I was going to earn that respect. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. So your junior year, now fast forward to senior year, okay? And
Yeah.
we all remember, the national championship game because I was at like Ole Miss a couple of years, behind you, what have you. And so we didn't really see, it wasn't the media exposure that it is now where you got all these, you can watch any game from any conference. So we were being in the SEC, we didn't really get the games or see the games from the Big 12 or whatever. And back then,
Right.
women's basketball was just getting, media coverage. So you really only saw like maybe some of the tournament games, but like conference tournament games, but you really saw the NCAA tournament. And so you're going into, your senior year, and I want to talk about that national championship game, because that was the game where Sheryl Swoopes became Sheryl Swoopes, right? That's the game that really just was like, you were like, okay, I'm here. Like, I'm here. There's no denying it. So when you were going through that, like that game, like, tell me about the prep. I'm sure you being a competitor, it was all, you looked at it like any other game, but you knew the magnitude of it. So before that, what was your mindset going into that?
Girl, when I tell you how nervous I was, I mean, butterflies and throwing up, like,
really?
all of it. So it's hard for me. Like I hear it, right, and I see it, because I go back and I watched them, but I look at me as me, right? Even then, it's like I'm Sheryl Swoopes from Brownfield, Texas, like grew up with nothing, went to Texas Tech. Now here we are in Atlanta. I was excited about just being in Atlanta, but I'll tell you what fuels my fire is some of the stuff that Jordan says in his Last Dance, right? Like, no one knew who we were. No one had ever heard of Texas Tech. No one had ever heard of Lubbock, Texas. So that's one thing that I'm like, okay. And I'm just keeping tabs of all this stuff. So to me, that's disrespectful, because there's only 4 teams in the Final Four. So you knew who Iowa was, Vanderbilt, and Ohio State. But I'm gonna need you to know who Texas Tech is. Okay. So that's the first sign of disrespect to me. And then there's all this hype around the other players. I'm hearing about Heidi Gillingham, who was 6. What was Heidi? 6'10".
She was 6'10".
Right? 6'10" from Vanderbilt. And I'm hearing about this freshman from Ohio State, Katie Smith. And I'm like, okay. And Iowa, it wasn't necessarily players, but it was Coach Stringer.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's Vivian Stringer. And so I'm looking around like, well, what are y'all saying about Texas Tech?
Right. Like
and what I hear is people saying, they got some girl named Sheryl Swoopes, right? Like, that's it. So I'm like, okay. So for me, I took that as a personal challenge to not only show people who we were, where we come from. And we had players on our team, and this is one thing I talk to kids about all the time, is it doesn't matter where you come from or where you grow up. You don't have to come from a big metropolis, Dallas. You can come from a small town. If you're good enough, people are going to find you.
Yep.
So players on our team, we were all from West Texas, with the exception of a couple that may have been from like San Antonio, but we were all from West Texas, and none of us had really traveled anywhere. So this was a big moment for us.
Right.
And so not only was it important for me to let people know who we are and why we're here, but also to try and help grow the game as a whole, right? Women's basketball. Now, although I was nervous for the moment, right? Like, this is new. I've never been here before. But I will also tell you, I was ready. Right. I was more than ready. I tell people, just because you're nervous, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right. It is a good thing.
But I will tell you, I don't even know what happened.
We know.
During the Final Four.
Okay, we know.
I know. What I know is that I had some hell of a teammates on my team. Yes. And I say this to people all the time, because usually it's the person that scores and does all those things that's in the newspaper. So everybody wants to be that person.
Right.
The thing to me that made our team so good was we were not the most athletic. We were not the most talented, but every single player on that team knew what their role was, understood what their role was, and accepted their role.
Yes.
And every single player on that team said to me and everybody else, Sheryl has to have the ball. That doesn't mean Sheryl shoots the ball every time she gets it.
Right.
But with the ball in my hand, I am going to demand respect, which is also going to allow me to get my teammates involved.
Right.
But if I had to do it all over again, I will tell you, I would take that same team every single day because we were such a close-knit family.
Listen, and that makes all the difference in the world when you have that kind of chemistry and players do understand that role and accepting that role. So now you guys win the national championship. You are Sheryl Swoopes. Like, you're in it. Like, you can't see yourself playing the game, but did you understand the magnitude of, like, after the game, you win the national championship, you play of the year, all this good stuff. Did you understand, like, who you were becoming and the impact that you were having on the game, or were you just in the moment?
I really didn't. I'll be very honest with you. I had no idea. To me, it was more about, oh my God, we just won a national championship.
Right.
We're going back to Lubbock. We're going to celebrate. We're going to have a good time, and we'll talk about this for a little while. And in my mind, to me, it was like, well, like, damn, what do I do next?
Right.
That's what was in my mind. Oh, there was never, ever, 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 ever a thought that went through my mind about like what I just did, what I personally just accomplished individually. Never. And honestly, it probably wasn't until we got back to Lubbock, and man, Jones Stadium, and this is 10, 11 o'clock at night. The football stadium is packed, about 60,000 people are celebrating, waiting for us. And I was like, wow, now that's what I thought was pretty cool. Right. But you know what? It probably wasn't until my coach got a phone call from Michael Jordan's people asking me to go to Chicago and work his basketball camp after the Final Four. That was probably the first time I kind of looked at myself and said, maybe you did something.
Right, you
Seriously.
Did
Seriously, I never, ever, ever, I never thought about it. And the crazy thing is that even now, like you and I having this conversation, and there are times when I'll go back and look at our game from the Final Four, and I see that, like, I still have record standing. Mm-hmm. Like, now I look back and I'm like, damn, you was putting in some work.
Some real work. Yeah, some real
like
work.
Now, you know what I mean? Now it kind of hits me, and I'm like, wow, like, that was special. That was really special.
Absolutely. Girl, listen. Okay, so your career, like, it's been so crazy and amazing. So you go and you fast forward, you're a part of the 96 Olympic team. And you guys were like everything for us, for little girls, for girls, females in college. And so now there's talk about the WNBA. And you were the first player assigned to the league. So walk me through that experience.
Golly, when there was a lot of whispering and talking about it, right? While we're in Atlanta, 96 Olympics, we're competing, but all of us are hearing these whispers about there's going to be, after the Olympics, there's going to be a women's professional league. And I don't think any of us really took that seriously, because there have been so many other leagues, right, in the past, and they didn't succeed. So we were just like, okay. And for me, it wasn't until what happened?
We can still hear you. We having a little bit of. There you go.
Did I lose you?
Nope. There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Why can't I hear you?
I'm not sure. Technology.
But you can hear me?
Technology.
Oh, hold on. Muted, unmuted. Now
Yep.
you can
So
hear me?
we can still hear you. Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna talk. Just
Just
not.
keep.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I was saying it wasn't until I actually had a conversation with Val Ackerman and the late great David Stern. And that's when I knew then that it was real. And the conversation was just basically, Sheryl, we are going to have a women's professional basketball league. Didn't even know it was going to be the WNBA at the time, just a women's professional basketball league. And they asked me not to play in the ABL. Because
Mm.
the ABL started up
Yep.
right after the 96 Olympics. And so for me, it was kind of a no-brainer. I was like, all right, cool. I won't play in ABL. I'll wait and see what happens with the WNBA. And it was more so for marketing reasons, right?
Mm.
To use me to promote and talk about the league and get the word out there. But even in having that conversation with him, it wasn't until the very first game when I'm sitting at home and I'm watching the New York Liberty and the Los Angeles Sparks tip off in LA, and Penny Toller scored the
Really.
first 2 points. Like in that
Really.
moment, I was like, this is really happening. Like we are really going to have a women's professional basketball league here in the States. And because you did it, so many players before had to go overseas because we didn't
Mm-hmm.
have a WNBA here. And now it's one of those things where you can go if you want to. If you don't, you can stay here and only play in the WNBA. But um, man, I still, when I look at the league today, I take a lot of personal pride in it, um, because I was the first player to sign. And to me, that that also puts a lot of pressure on you. And I want to
Yeah.
see the league do nothing but succeed. And I think it's up to myself and you, and not just the current players, but former players, to continue to do what we're doing to make sure that happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I was in
I
Houston. Can you hear
I
me?
can't hear your question.
Oh, let's take a viewer question. Let's see if
Maybe if I put my headset in, I can hear you because I can't hear you.
well we can hear you. Okay, Swoopes. This question is
Give
from
me a second.
Erica
I'm gonna
Mitchell.
put these on because I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm gonna ask the question. Erica Mitchell, when Sheryl gets back on, let's see, Swoopes, who is one current player you wish you could be teammates with if you played now and why? And I just want to take this time to just thank you guys for watching. Are you able to hear? Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so we have a question from Erica Mitchell. She asks, who is one current player you wish you could be teammates with if you played now and why?
Oh gosh. Man, that's so unfair because there's a lot of them. Um, I would probably go with Courtney Vandersloot.
Really? I like Courtney. She played at she was on the West Coast. Gonzaga. She came from
Gonzaga.
Gonzaga.
Hmm.
Gonzaga.
Hmm.
Okay, why Courtney?
Um, First of all, I think Courtney is one of the most underrated players in the league. I do.
Mm,
Um, what I love about her is she reminds me a lot. Now, I will say this: I've played with some phenomenal PGs in the game. Dawn
mm-hmm.
Staley was one of the best, hands down. I played with Sue Bird. I think Sue Bird's a good point guard. Tisha Pinachero, played against her, great point guard. The reason why I picked Sloot is, first of all, because she's gonna find me wherever I'm at on the floor and get me to rock.
Right.
If we're being honest, no, but
Right.
I love the way she runs her team, and I've watched her progress over the years. I remember watching her when she first came in the league, and I was just like, I don't know if this kid's gonna make it like that long, right? But she's put in the time, she's put in the work, she's become a better defender, she's a better scorer. She's a true point guard. And if I could pick if you're only giving me one, I'm gonna roll with Sloot on that one.
Okay, Courtney Vandersloot. So now I want to talk because we're running out of time. I don't want to
Okay.
dismiss the time with the comments, and then I want to talk about your
Of
foundation.
course you don't.
Like, listen, like being a part of the first ever WNBA championship team, and then the 4 championships that which I was fortunate to be a part of too, but you were part of 4 of them. Like, explain having been the first player assigned to the league, and then you had to sit out the majority of the first season because you were, you became a mom. And as a competitor,
Yeah.
I know because I was there, so I
Yeah.
know how bad you wanted to get on the court. But then being able to come back the next year and win again, like, just in your mind, like, did you foresee that being, did you see that unfolding? Because the teams were New York and LA. Here comes Houston, right?
I knew we would be good. I did. I didn't know how. I knew we would be good. I didn't know we would be great. I heard of Cynthia Cooper, but only from what she did at USC and playing overseas. Knew absolutely nothing about Tina Thompson. Tina was in college, was the first player drafted, right? Because when the league started, players were appointed. We didn't have a draft.
Right.
And then, people talk about the big 3, myself and Coop and Tina, but Jeanette Arcane,
yes,
one of the best players that's ever played the game. And I don't think she gets the respect she deserves, but she was a huge part of those championships. Kim Perrott, Wanda Guyton, Tammy Jackson, Amaya Val, like, I can go on and on, yourself. And the reason why I bring those players up, is because, yeah, it's great to have a big 3, a Swoopes, a Coop, a Thompson. But if you don't have role players, if you don't have other players that fit in and fill voids that we have and accept those roles and understand we got a big 3, right? And everybody knew that's where the ball's going, to those 3. Right. But accept your role. If there's any piece of that doesn't work, then we don't win championships.
I agree.
But I will say this, and I just thought about it. I keep going back to The Last Dance. Michael said something in his interview, and I think they asked him a question like, were you mean, or were you a fun person, or whatever? And he just said, listen, a championship mentality is different than just any old person walking in the gym. And if you don't understand that, then you can't be a part of this. And the reason why I bring that up is because myself, Coop, Tina, we all had that mentality. And I think you can speak to this. When, we were at the gym before everybody, we stayed later than everybody, and we went at it.
Practices were like games.
And to me, I think the way we felt was our practices were going to be tougher than the competition. Right? And I think that's what prepared us for the Liberty, the Sparks, the Mercury. Like, we never went into a game feeling like we weren't going to win.
Yep. I can definitely attest to that. I tell people all the time, we had players sitting on the bench that if they were somewhere else, they would have gotten significant playing time. But it was just something special about that. Like, our practices were absolutely competitive, but y'all set the tone. There was an expectation. And I think, like you said in the beginning, that's what set our team apart from, other teams in the league. It's just the approach, even in practice. By the time you got
was different.
Games, that was light work.
It was okay. It was different.
It was very different. So now
it was special. It was special.
Yes, it was very special. So now you have your foundation. Tell us about your foundation and what you're up to now.
Well, I started my first of all, I've had a nonprofit for about 20 years. And I'm kind of ashamed to say that because I never really did anything with it while I was playing, because I couldn't dedicate all of my time to it. And now that I don't play, I dedicate 100% of my time to my nonprofit. My organization is Sheryl Swoopes Foundation for Youth, but I have a program that I'm currently working on, and it's called Back to Our Roots. And I've been working on it for a year now. And what Back to Our Roots is, it's a nonprofit organization that's aimed to inspire and empower our African American kids, to teach them who we are as a people. And I'm bringing that up because I think about where we are right now in this country with racism and social injustices, and just our black men and women trying to figure out where do we fit into this world. And a lot of our kids don't know. So what we will do with Back to Our Roots is actually take a group of high school students back to Africa, and we will tour the slave dungeons and the Last Bath, the W.B. Du Bois Museum, the Civil Rights Museum in Memphis before we go, and really just to educate them on our ancestry. They can choose if they want to have their DNA tested before we go. We will also take care of that. And I did mine, and I can tell you it was so empowering for me. And what I really want to be able to do is just give our African American youth hope, and teach them and show them that you do belong. We do
Right.
belong. We come from royalty. We come from kings and queens, and our ancestors died, so that we could have the rights that we have today. And I'm saying that because I want to end on this by saying, and if you don't use that and go vote, then our ancestors all died in vain.
All died in vain. Absolutely. Well, Sheryl, do you have like a website that if someone wants to donate or
I
support
do.
your organization or yeah, just share that with the audience.
So the website is btor22.com. B as in boy, T as in Tom, O as in Oscar, R as in Robert. So back to our roots. My number 22.com.
Okay,
And
good. So that
there's lots of information on the site. There's a place if anybody's interested in becoming a partner, a donor, and I will also be looking for volunteers to travel with us to Africa. So there's a place on there for you to fill out a questionnaire as well.
well, Sheryl, that's amazing. Going back to Africa, that's a great experience. And so I just want to thank you for taking the time to hang out with us today. And I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time because when I first got to Houston, you were Sheryl Swoopes to all of us, right?
Mm.
But just to be in that space with you and Cynthia and Tina, and just to see how you guys worked and just the dedication you had to the game. You never took a day off. You were so, just so intentional about just growing the game and making an impact. So I just want to thank you for all that you've done for the game, and I wish you well in all of your endeavors. And please stay safe.
I will. So can I add something for you?
Absolutely.
I appreciate being on here with you. And thank you for saying that. But I will say this from one mom of a 23-year-old black man to another mom. I know the struggle, right, as an athlete. And I will say this, you were one that held it down regardless of what was going on. And you always came ready to work, ready to show up. So I was always very appreciative of that. And more than that, I'm appreciative of our friendship. And I
Well,
love
thank you
you.
so much. Love you too. Okay, don't make me cry,
I won't. I won't.
girl. All right.
Don't mess up your lashes.
Thank you so much. All
You're
right.
welcome.
All right. So that ends our bye. That ends our broadcast. I want to thank you guys for tuning in and for sharing this time with us. And Rusha We'll be back next week. I want to thank the NBA National Basketball Retired Players Association for creating this platform for former players to keep us engaged with not just the community, but with fans and people who have followed our careers. So I'm very appreciative of the platform and the opportunity, and I want to thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you all so much for watching today's episode with Sheryl Swoopes and Yolanda Moore. Coming up next, this Thursday, we will be having another chat with Kenny Gaddison is going to be talking to our very own chairman of the board, Johnny Davis, an NBA champion in his own right. So that will be coming up this Thursday, right here, same place, NBA alumni via Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. And as always, if you would like to check out any of our previously recorded episodes, including today's fantastic conversation with 2 former teammates, you can go to legendsofbasketball.com/legendslive. Until Thursday, take care of each other and be well.